Many months ago, some of you requested an eggless chocolate and orange pancake. This egg-free version will impress even the most skeptical taste buds, and I'm quite sure that your guests won't believe it's a plant-based cake. The chocolate flavor is wonderfully intense and creates a delightful contrast with the orange. The crumb is rich and pleasantly moist. If you're not into this flavor combination, I'll show you how to adjust the flavor and moisture of the crumb to match your preferences. Plus, this recipe can come in handy when you want to make a cake but you realize you've just run out of eggs. Let's get started by preparing the bundt pan. Grease it well. Bundt pans are beautiful but can be a bit tricky. The more intricate they are, the riskier it is to ruin the top of your cake. Sprinkle it generously with cocoa powder, making sure that every single inch is well coated. Flip the bundt pan over and tap out the excess. The next step is to prepare the buttermilk. Pour 140 grams of milk into a bowl. It can be cow's milk or a plant-based milk rich in protein like soy or pea. Then add half a tablespoon of white or apple vinegar. Give it a stir and set it aside to let it curdle. In my bowl, I have 300 grams of all-purpose flour that has already been sifted. When it comes to egg-free cakes, I like to add a generous tablespoon of starch as a thickening agent. Next, sift and add 70 grams of cocoa powder. This amount will give the cake a quite intense chocolate flavor, but it can also depend on the type of cocoa powder that you're using. Lastly, add 16 grams of baking powder and half a teaspoon of salt. Now you'll need 2 big oranges, more or less like this. Take the zest from both of them, and then extract the juice to make 240 grams. If you're short by 10-20 grams to reach the total, you can use a mandarin, a tangerine, or simply add some water. Let's talk about sugar. 300 grams work for me, but I tend to reduce sugar, so you may need to add 30 grams more. 330 grams sounds a lot, but trust me, you'll need it if you want a sweeter taste. Cocoa powder can be quite bitter, and you might not like that hint of bitterness with less sugar. You can use granulated sugar, but I prefer cane sugar. I also enjoy mixing it with muscovado because I love how it deepens the flavor, adding some caramel notes to baked goods. My bowl contains 150 grams of cane sugar and 150 grams of muscovado. Muscovado tends to clump, so make sure to break up all the lumps before mixing it with the other ingredients. Now it's time to add the zest of the 2 oranges. You'll need to rub it with the sugar if you want the orange to be discernible, because cocoa powder tends to add flavors. If instead you don't like orange, add a nice teaspoon of vanilla essence. Next, add the orange juice and 140 grams of Greek-style yogurt, which will give you a moister crumb. If you prefer a lighter crumb, you can replace it with milk or simply omit it. If you want a vanilla flavor, replace 240 grams of orange juice with 240 grams of milk infused with a vanilla bean. You will find a link to the video on how to make infused milk in the comment box. Now add 140 grams of buttermilk. I don't suggest replacing or omitting buttermilk because it also works as an egg substitute, and without it, the cake may become too dry and crumbly, which is not something anyone would enjoy. Now it's time to add the oil. I'm using refined coconut oil, a must-have for eggless baking, as it greatly helps prevent the cake from crumbling. Coconut oil typically comes in a solid form, and I usually order a large jar online as I struggle to find in local stores. In comment box, I'll give you the link to purchase the one that I'm using. Before adding it to the cake, you'll need to melt it in the microwave. Add 100 grams. Whisk the wet ingredients until well combined. Then pour them into the dry ingredients and stir until well incorporated. I'll give you another tip. It's much better to add the dry ingredients to the wet ones in 2 or 3 parts. This will result in fewer clumps and a smoother batter. Put the batter into the bundt pan and bake it at 180 degrees Celsius for 50 minutes in conventional mode. Let the cake stabilize inside the pan for 20 minutes. Then flip it over. And the cake should come off on its own, just as it did for me. It didn't turn out as smooth as I expected, but it doesn't matter, because we are going to cover up the imperfection with a chocolate ganache. Let the pancake cook completely on a wire rack. It will take about a couple of hours. To make chocolate ganache, use semi-sweet chocolate. I'm using a 140 grams bar of 50% chocolate. Chop into very small pieces to ensure quick and even melting. Transfer the chunks to a pan. and add 70 grams of warm water. In another larger pan, preheat some water to a warm temperature, making sure not to bring it to a boil. Boiling water can burn chocolate. Start whisking and patiently wait for all the chunks to melt. Occasionally remove the pan from the warm water to prevent overheating. You'll end up with a smooth and glossy cream like this. I suggest tasting the ganache. If you find it's not sweet enough, you can add a teaspoon or two of maple syrup. Add the zest of a medium orange or vanilla essence to the ganache while it is still warm. Whisk to combine, and then set it aside to let it cool down, set up and thicken. In the meantime, transfer the bundt cake to a serving dish and cover the edges of the dish with parchment paper. Test the thickness of the ganache with a teaspoon. Its surface must be well covered and coated by the chocolate ganache, whose consistency must be not too runny but still pourable. Top the bundt cake to taste and let the ganache drip down its sides. I had some leftover, so I think that 100 grams of chocolate is enough for a good topping. In that case, add 50 grams of water. This bundt cake looks absolutely delicious and inviting. I recently served it to someone who isn't a fan of this flavor combination or chocolate in general. To my surprise, they not only enjoy it, but even went back for a second slice, complimenting how good it was. I'm quite sure your guests will have a similar experience and ask you for the recipe. If you have an event or a gathering, you can prepare the bundt cake the day before, let it cool completely, and then store it in a cake stand with lid. The next day, it will still taste as perfect as if freshly baked. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and share it. Consider subscribing to my channel. Leave a comment, and if you like my videos, don't forget to hit the bell icon for notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.